Right. I think it's yours, Joe.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. This is going to be probably a YouTube exclusive for my History Barbarians.
And it
Uh,
is a history, Sam, the recommended book of the day.
oh, Dan Jones. He's always great. I love his books.
I
A
just
new
wanted to
history
say
of
we
Middle
are
Age.
a history podcast today, and I've got it open to William Marshall, who I see a lot of in this tale and is a very infamous guy. And it took me all of 2 minutes to interrupt Joe. That's a new record.
Yes. Okay. This is going to be me laughing the whole time. I didn't know about that book, so I got to pick it up.
Powers and Thrones. Powers and Thrones.
Maybe we'll have to do a book club of that.
I would love
The
to.
oh, yeah, Dan and I are doing Capetier, the Plantagenet, using Dan Jones' Plantagenet book as a guide,
Yeah.
and we're doing a Chinese history book club using the Cambridge history from
Mm.
like 1928 or something, or 1946 or something like that, for Chinese history. So we're going, and we're going to get back to Japan at some point down the road, so that we're kind of following foreign narratives. And once we finish with England, I want to move to Scotland, and because I have a great love for
I love
Scotland.
how you say Scotland. You say it like Scotland.
Yeah, I try. But
You
this,
do, yeah.
but this Knight's Tale is the second most anachronistic depiction of the Middle Ages I've ever seen.
And it is a beautiful thing.
Um, the
And
most
we've talked
anachronistic,
about this anachronism. You know what I'm going to come in with, don't you?
yeah. The thing is, now on the positive anachronistic side, I don't mind as much the intro with the "We Will Rock You" thing. Uh, the one lady's outfits, the noblewoman, where she's dressed like a lady from the 1920s or something, was too bizarre for me. I didn't like it.
Shannon Sosaman. And why? Where did she go, by the way? Where did Shannon Sosaman go in the world? And why isn't she in more movies? I don't
I
know.
don't remember. I
Personal
don't,
opinion. I just thought she was great. How about like the classical French beauties in that movie? You have to admit that her handmaid is like the ultimate, just a little Mediterranean, just a little,
yeah.
just enough to get a
And
little, you know.
but
You have to admit that her handmaid was the French
hotter.
beauty.
Yeah, was hotter than her. And
And I
um,
think Shannon Sosaman, I have a high opinion of her. She was
mm,
only in like a few other movies in like the right around that time, 2000s.
my favorite French beauty of any movie that appeared in Anglo-Saxon or American film was, I'm not good with the names. I'll just look her up from
Hmm.
Brides of Dracula.
While you're doing that, you can still hear me, I think, but I've got coffee brewing. I just started it while I
No
was
problem.
waiting. I'm just gonna run real
Okay,
quick because I gotta. Yeah, keep
her
going while you're doing
her
that.
name was Yvonne Monlaw. She played Marianne in Brides of Dracula. She's probably the most, at least in her youth, she was the most beautiful actress I have ever seen in my entire life.
Ooh, oh, I'm trying to think of what mine is. I mean,
Who,
it's like season. You know, I go through seasons. Like one day I know.
but as for the story of A Knight's Tale, um,
See this.
sorry, you're breaking up.
Go ahead.
Um, well, the story is one in which we follow a young man called William. As you pointed out, Sam, he's inspired obviously by William Marshall, Guillaume Marichal.
Hmm.
Um, and but they set the story up long after the reigns of the Angevin Plantagenet kings. They set it up in the reign of Edward III, which was the richest period in English history in terms of the Middle Ages. And this was a high point in the period of England. And we know what period it is as Poitiers, the Battle of Poitiers takes place. And let me make sure I get the year right. Um,
I remember that. That's where Count Adhemar is sort of like you know, he has this dagger, and he's like, Ulrich, Ulrich, Ulrich.
Yep.
Did not look like a fun battle to be at.
1356. No, not really. The English won. But the thing with now Adema is played by Rufus Sewell, whom fans of my channel remember I reviewed Pillars of the Earth, which he starred in, and which is
I'm a Rufus Sewell fan, by the way. I think he plays a great bad guy too.
I think he plays better heroes than he does bad guys.
Interesting. Okay, maybe we'll tap into that later.
Villains are easy to portray. Heroes are hard because it takes more. Heroes require a little more effort to give spice and vinegar to, so to speak. Whereas villains, you just need to go maniacal or just go negative, and that's
The
easy.
White Witch was easier to write than Aslan.
I would argue yes.
I'm agreeing. I'm saying, you know, she's more Jadis is more fun to write than Aslan because you have to. It's hard to make virtue appeal to people, and sometimes you need anachronisms to do it. Go ahead, Joe.
But I was going to say it's funner for, in my view, to write heroes than villains.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, a villain is easier. Like Shao from my Shit Dinosaurs book is just he's a guy who violates women. He butchers people. He's willing to kill one of his own kids. He's just a violent.
Sounds like kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Sounds like kind of a, you know, not a guy you want to be around.
He was easy to write. Whereas writing Henri, the main lead who becomes a monk, was very difficult for me because I had to balance out his negative qualities with his virtue, and it was hard making his virtue shine a little more than the negativity. And it was like that
phrase.
Yeah, it was just tricky to get him just to say right, so that he's vulnerable, but he's ultimately masculine, and he overcomes the vulnerability to become all that he must be, which is to say, almost an ultimate father-type figure to a number of characters. So it's very hard to get this just right. Now, in Knight's Tale, I would argue that William and his mentor, I forget his name, the plump squire?
Roland.
Roland. Roland is...
no, they're English. It's Roland, my friend.
Fine. Roland. Roland is a very well-written character. And I would argue he's well acted. He's one of the best acted characters in the film.
I've seen this guy somewhere before. I don't know who he is, but he's a great character actor.
He is. What I liked was him at the beginning saying, when William says, all right, well, we want attorney, while faking to be our boss, our liege.
A big deal at this time. This was not done. I want to be very clear too. You know, if you watch the film, and this is important, and I'm going to give it back over to you, Joe. But if you watch The Kingdom of Heaven, one of the more interesting things that Ridley Scott does is you will see Guy de Lusignan point or gesture at Orlando Bloom playing the Baron of Evelyn, the bastard son of the guy who only became a baron because he went on the Crusades, and he says, "In France, this would not inherit." So he's saying like. Right.
Although, to an extent, although upward mobility was possible.
Sure, it was, but he was kind of like almost saying like this thing could not inherit. So this is a noble person. He's faking it. This is a death sentence if he gets caught.
Well, sort of.
Maybe. I don't know.
Sort of. He'll certainly be imprisoned. But here's the thing. He could escape any real punishment by going either to the church or pleading his case with another nobleman or royal. And I only mention this because...
whose jurisdiction would he fall under, being this sort of knight errant
which region,
with this guy?
Which region is he in?
Well,
that's the question. You see, if he's in...
Rouen is a big moment. Rouen is a big moment.
He's in Rouen. He falls under Normandy. He's authority. Now the local,
and they had their own legacy, own laws that were very different.
Yeah. Although the thing is, Now, before the English started violating Port de France Internel, he would fall under the direct authority of the king's officials in Normandy. Probably the king himself,
The
because
people
Normandy.
to whom he had enfiefed the
Yeah.
land.
Well, I think the king held the land directly with Normandy.
Okay.
They didn't want to let it go because they remembered Henri, Richard, and Jean.
You're just like,
Or-
Rollo, go if you get these Vikings out of here, just take it.
Yeah, but then the French king said, "We're taking this back
Yeah, they didn't
because
like that either.
you guys became too powerful with this." But the thing is, William would
And
answer.
my novel, AFL the Bastard, that is exactly what book 1 in the very tight trilogy comes from. You can find it in the show notes that I hope will be sent out with this.
Yep, I'm going to be putting in the description. And the thing with William is that if he was caught in Normandy, in Rouen, he would have to answer to Philippe VI, I believe, was king at this time. So,
Well, now king or duke, but he would go to the king. He would not go through the Duke of Normandy
there is no Duke of Normandy. So
at this time.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, not counting the English kings. Like, he'd go directly to the King of France because the English kings took it back.
I'm so glad we did this because did you just see the boner that I made? Like I forgot that a central tenet of my own novel is that these kings are calling themselves Rex Anglorum, and then I don't know the French, but
Well-
Duke of Normandy.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. And the thing is, William would answer to Philippe. And Philippe says, I will say this. William would probably get away with it because Philippe Sis was this guy who was like, I love chivalry. I love chivalry. Oh, there's a
But
guy.
I think about though, like, okay, fine, I get convicted of some kind of crime, I am in court.
You commit
I
fraud.
can't. Sure, it's you. Let me tell you something. Going on unemployment insurance in this country, you got to be careful. But I'll tell you this, right? My
No, I mean,
company
go.
before I was fired, they told me, and I was fired as part of a big group of people. They fired so many people that my boss couldn't fire me directly. He was fired. So, and they said it was right. It was a layoff, pure and simple. I say fired because I don't like resource action. I refuse to use that term. I say I was fired because I was let go. Anyway, I thought for a second, because I was a pretty successful sales rep, I had gotten such a large chunk of money that it had to be put into review by something called the compensation committee. I went back and forth, cited my own law, which would be the Common Code of North Carolina, and eventually got the money that I was entitled to based on my sales back. Couple weeks later, I was fired along with these other people. To me, that appeared as if something that would be worth looking into as a potential wrongful termination. This was a lot of money for me, and I think it would be a lot of money for a lot of other people. I was able to secure it. However, it was close. And the point is, I would have had to get a lawyer. I would have had to set aside my time. I would have had to burn through savings. And I wonder, William going through these courts, would he have faced something similar to that? Like, okay, what are you just gonna? You can't just go to the king.
Yep, it would have cost him.
Could he sustain that?
First resort would have been an assize court in Rouen. And let's say the case gets blown up bigger, he then is forwarded to Paris. But if the king is
in America, we would call this appeals courts. There are appeals courts where they go up. Yes.
Yeah. But here's the thing: if the king is in the region, the king might sit in court. A lot of French kings love to.
Where did the kings sit in court during this time?
Typically, they wandered. They would
itinerant.
Yeah. They were itinerant. So he might appear in Normandy one day. Then next week he's riding off into Poitou, and he's over in Poitou.
Can you imagine like getting a herald like 2 months ahead of time, and they'd be like, "Yeah, the king and his court are coming to your estate. Get ready." Yeah. The king.
Most people in the Middle Ages went, "Damn, now I have to host him. This is going to cost me so much." They didn't want it.
And what are you going to say to him? He's the king. He can't do anything.
Well, yeah. Although the French kings typically would say, "Désolé, sorry. Here's compensation," and they were generous about it because them and the German kings tend to say, yeah, sorry about that. We know it's discourteous. We know it's a pain. Here you go.
Okay.
Like St. Louis, everybody wanted to host him because St. Louis was frugal and had a small household, and he was severe with his people and said, "Don't you cost my peasants more than they ought to." And like at one point,
I like him.
Yeah, he was sleeping under an apple tree one day, and a peasant after church, and a peasant just approaches him, kicks his boot, and tells him, "Hey, I don't like how you're running things." You have St. Louis blinking stupidly because he's still kind of asleep, and he's like, "Can you sit down and tell me why?" And the guy then proceeds to complain to him. And St. Louis actually even tells one of his best friends, Jean, like, "Shush, I'm trying to listen to him." And he considers the guy's perspective very carefully and actually takes this peasant's opinion and complaints very seriously, and even says, "Oh, okay, thanks for letting me. I didn't know there were these problems. Thanks. Hope you'll like. I'm going to come back next week for church. Hope you'll be there, and I'd like to hear your opinion then too." So, like a lot of these kings, like we imagine them as being like in Game of Thrones, where they would never be seen with a peasant or they hated them. Wasn't the case. A lot of them actually liked their peasants. But the thing with William is his case is very peculiar. Although, let it be known, Guillaume Maréchal, William Marshal, is one case where I don't want to say peasant, but he's almost a peasant, jumped up. He's lesser nobility.
He's like related to nobility distantly.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, his family, like he's got like cousins or something who are noble.
Yeah. And the thing is, and his father was disgraced in the Anarchy Wars because.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull something up that I think you'll enjoy. So keep going.
And yet, William was able to show up at a joust and just win, and just everybody was like, "Okay, that's fine." So
social mobility you're talking about, if I may.
Yeah. Now, that's where this plays a role in this movie. A lot of the nobles in the movie, this is historically accurate, react with, "Oh my gosh, he pretended to be a knight." Big whoop. Okay, so when's his next match? So, like, some of the people are like,
that's how it would have played out, you think?
I think it would have depended on who and what he did. Now, if he
come on, how can you say no to Heath Ledger's face? I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Great actor. Now, if he is caught and he besmirches the honor of, let's say, the king or the crown,
God, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Now, if he's insulting towards a nobleman, yeah, that's horrible. Now, it might be that the church says, "Well, listen, guys," it might be if people do get angry, the church might step in and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're going to be mediating this. Penance, dude. Time for you to do penance." And if he's contrite and says, "Yeah, okay, I'll do my penance. Just don't take my."
What is penance? What would be like an example of a penance that would apply here?
All right. He might have to pay an indulgence, which would basically be.
Okay. I'm familiar.
Yep, him.
But we can go into it for the historic aspect.
Yeah, him paying to wipe away a sin. So he pays to get in good with the church, and the church will then defend him, and will say, "Okay, he was sinful and he committed a crime in the eyes of God and the church, but because he was willing to forfeit a certain amount of money, a tithe, we're willing to overlook it this one time." What people forget is that with the plenary indulgences, there came
plenary.
Oh, that's just an attached term. So like indulgence. I'll just use that.
Okay.
For simplicity's sake.
I'm the type of annoying that will ask you any word I don't recognize.
No problem. Indulgences were meant to be like a one-time thing only. You can't just keep saying, "Well, I murdered someone last week. Here's another indulgence." That's how we imagine in the modern sense. That's not.
You have a dark night of the soul, but instead of St. Augustine, you maybe go on a bender and hurt somebody, right? That's your one time where you have a great moral failing, maybe, if I may.
Yeah.
That's your indulgence.
Although there were those who relapsed, but you had to actually show.
See, I'm sensitive to addiction though. I believe that is a disease that people have personally. And yeah, it's tough. It is tough. I've seen people. We don't need to get into that. Proceed.
but yeah, the thing is, the church might step in and say, hold up. Like, okay, the guy screwed up, but he's a darn good knight. He's darn good at jousting. And there were churchmen who'd say, we don't care
Tucker
what you
can
say.
joust.
Yeah. And the thing is, some churchmen were warriors. So you might get the church to intercede.
Bishop Odo, if I may, Bishop Odo of William the Conqueror's posse was out on the Bayou Tapestry at the Battle of Hastings with, I believe, a club. And you know those Bayou Tapestry things that are just like,
I love it.
I love it too, but I still see the guys who are just like,
Yeah.
you know. Anyway, it's fun. And it's just an amazing historical document about Bishop Odo is out there with his mace, kicking ass.
Yeah. And so the church would probably intercede. I'm not sure how, but they'd probably intercede.
And you've seen The Last Duel, right?
No. But the thing is, the church often played mediator between people.
I just asked that because it's all about the French law system during that time. I thought you'd love it.
Well, I'm not really keen on Henry V all the time. Because
he's not portrayed in a positive light. Very, very young person is playing him. Very young.
Yeah, he was actually a bit of a muscle man historically, though. So Kenneth Branagh was one of the best actors to portray him because he looks like a hulking guy. But the thing is, to get to the movie, William's situation is very peculiar. So it might be that he appeals through the church. The church would probably consider his perspective and say, well, you did lie. We don't really like that. So the church would be like, we're not exactly keen on the lie. You're really good at jousting. We'll talk to the local sheriff or the count or the duke or something. We're just going to bring the case up and ask him his opinion because they did like to work with the secularists and people. So like, this is a very particular case. That being said, it would very likely be that the church would not want to meddle as well. Like it would depend on the local official. So
we should also note that Uhtred, under the name Uhtred of Liechtenstein, is famous in his day.
So he's pretending to be someone famous. And that's where the church would meddle and say, you shouldn't have done that.
But he's also attained fame through his own skill.
Yeah. So this is where it would probably be forwarded up. Or
do you think this might go all the way up to Philip, whatever the ordinal number was?
Well, I would say the church, with regards to them, would send it up to a local abbot who would probably interview him and say, let's talk.
What is the church definition of abbot? What makes an abbot different from a monk, for my dumb ears?
An abbot is the head of a monk. Of an abbey. He's the head of the abbey. You have an abbey, and an abbey is a monastery. An abbot is head of the monastery. You also get priories, which are monasteries as well, and their title would be prior. So in this regard, the abbot might take, if it happens near church land, he will meddle. If it doesn't, he doesn't meddle. So I should have explained that earlier. I didn't make myself very logical.
No, this is so great. I keep going flying, and you're just like movie, and it's so good. It's like a breath of fresh air to me. Like real quick, check this out. One line quote. You'll see, he'll set the world alight yet. You'll see, he'll set the world alight yet. From Guillaume de Tancarville, Chamberlain of Normandy, on his cousin, Guillaume Marchal.
Oh.
You will see, he'll set the world alight yet.
Well, as for William in here, I think my favorite line is with his friend, the plump guy, who says, God loves you, William. And, he says that at the beginning and even at the end, and he says, and so do I. And the thing with, I would say the best part of the movie is almost that plump friend who's just...
Roland.
Yeah, Roland is the guiding force in a way. Him and the gambling guy. These two...
Geoffrey Chaucer?
Yeah. Chaucer and Roland are like the guiding forces here. And
Okay.
I feel that the climax should have played a little more with these two characters. The climax was very downplayed.
But what about the poetry part?
The poetry was fine. Um,
Now I'm a poet, and I know you're a poet too, but I like it. I think it's good poetry.
it is. I think, though, now, for one thing, the woman being the blacksmith, that would have raised eyebrows.
I knew
And
you were gonna. I knew it.
the thing is, the upper body strength required, I'm not sure she'd be able to summon and look that good.
I based my novels Terran Steel. That's what that is. It's that. It looks like they look like they, during a time where there's so much chainmail, they're infamous for having big plates of steel. Not quite that uniform, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, with her, the female blacksmith, I kind of think there should have been a male relative. I know they were trying to be all countercultural.
But can we
But
say, like, Camera Cultural has never looked so good? Can we just say that?
yeah,
And she was Scottish too. Come on.
Yeah, which adds to the appeal. But
it's never looked so good.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is France had the largest Scottish diaspora in the Middle Ages.
They have been aligned, these two. Long history.
Yes, the Old Alliance, which bound France and Scotland together. Interesting fun fact. It was created really in 1293, formally created in 1298, but really in 1293 to contain England. But the Scottish Wars of Independence saw a large body of French knights defying orders and going across the channel to Scotland to fight alongside the Scots against the English.
Era?
Oh, this would have been in the from around 1300 to 1314.
Another reason you should watch The Last Duel, and that's all I'll say about that.
Okay. Well, the interesting thing is with the Scots, they would always honor their word to the French. And the French would fail several times. But it's through France and Scotland coming together that they actually ended up smashing the English armies of Henry V at Beaujeu in 1417, I believe, or 1419, thereabouts. And the thing with, it was 1417. But
in fairness, they wouldn't have, after a certain period of time, they wouldn't have particularly cared that much. The exact date. The people of that time, I believe. A big theme in my novel is like, AFL's like, I'm about 20 or 21.
Yeah,
I'm about that age.
To an extent. Oh, wait, I was trying to imitate Metatron in one regard. In the year of our Lord, 1417, that sounds much better. I've been joking.
Metatron, the voice of the god?
No, Metatron is a history YouTuber. It's just he's been making fun of the BCE thing by just mocking it and saying, in the year of our Lord, 1417 or something. Like, he's just saying the full thing just to make fun of people obsessing about the dating system. He just thinks it's funny, so I decided to join in as well.
Okay. The woke dating system. All right.
No, actually, it's just people are fighting over it so ferociously. He just started making fun of both sides and just.
But that's when Jesus was born. That's when That's when baby Jesus he came out of Mary, and now he's born now.
Yep. So the thing with the Scots is that France never had a finer friend, and there's also folklore that says that one of the great knights in service of Charlemagne was actually the Scottish king. Like, basically the idea was that there's an old myth about the Scottish king going over to serve in France and forging a good friendship with Charlemagne. And then he's sent back and Fiofed with the title of King of Scotland or of Pictland.
King of the Scots, I believe, if I may.
Yeah. And the king in question was purely mythological. And this is where this myth, I think, was in circulation already at the time. And the trouble is, this is what, like, the way the Scots and the French perceived each other was as almost one people, but not quite. Like they're cousins, they're brothers, they're sisters. So there was the perception of the Scots and the Irish as kind of being relatives, because the French were Celtic, the Scots were Celtic.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But the French are Celts. Yeah, we're Celts, and the Gaulois, Gaul.
Yeah,
Caesar?
like Asterix and Obelix. Do you know these guys?
Precisely. And the thing is, Gaul was a province of Rome.
Isn't it pretty cool that American knows Asterix and Obelix?
Yes. But the thing is with the Gaulois is that these are the ancestors of the Frank, because the Franks took over Gaul, renamed it Francia, and the Gauls all went and joined the tribe of the Franks. But the Franks, who are Germanic people, interbred with the Gauls, but ultimately the Gauls were to become Franks, and the Franks were Celts. And
I may need that in writing at some point.
No problem.
Just,
so
yeah.
That's why the Scots, who are relatives of the Irish, and the Irish who would, well, there were French officials even as far as late as the 7th century who went back and forth between Ireland and France. And so there were trade ties and cultural ties, and monastic ties. So you have Scotland, Ireland, and France, which formed a kind of commercial and cultural triangle. The problem is England always stood between them. And
they don't want to be surrounded.
Yes. But in turn, England was aggressively against each of them. And these three Celtic nations became England thought we have to keep fighting against all of them. But the more England resisted them, the closer they became. So
nothing will bind a group of people together like a shared enemy.
Yes. But on the other hand, all of them were kinsmen. They were family. They are like, they're cousins. And the thing is, there were Irishmen and Irishwomen who had bred with the French, and the Irish colonized Scotland at one point. Well, at several points. But the Scots, in turn, perceived themselves as a Irish nation for a long time. So, and the Scots also, because they were colonized by the Normans as well, also perceived themselves as
a lot of people don't know about. There's a Italian peninsula conquest by the Normans, and the English one is by far the most famous, but not the only Norman conquest.
Yep. And the French, but the Scots, the thing with the Normans is it never really sunk into the culture. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. There was always, it was oil and water to a certain extent. It came down to a point.
Yeah. The Normans assimilated to the Scots and became absorbed into it. But where the Norman influence served to sometimes alienate people from France, Scotland, it didn't. It only drew them closer into the orbit of France, and it only made France look at them as kind of kinsmen even more.
Brothers from another mother.
Good phrase. And the thing is, this Scottish blacksmith woman, her being Scottish and in France makes sense. So from that perspective, it is one of the most logical things in this movie, because a Scotsman or Scotswoman being in France, it's like, okay, what's a good example? It's like a German,
maybe a Canadian being an American, at least up until recently.
Yeah.
So I went to school with people who were just like Canadians, and it was like, yeah, you're kind of like us. We're pretty much the same.
Yeah. And you look at, or it's like a German, a Saxon being over in Bavaria. Like, same. Yeah.
A German maybe being in Austria or vice versa.
But here's an interesting thing. I can occasionally do the Scottish accent. And on my last teaching job, when I was in Quebec, I did the Scottish accent, and all my students got excited. And they are obsessed with the accent. They love the accent, but they don't really like the English North American accent. They think it's boring. Actually,
like American accent.
Yeah.
Or the North American English. Got it.
Yeah. But they perceive the Scottish and Irish accents as the most attractive. The English
We've
accent.
discussed this. We've agreed, I think, that there's no more beautiful incarnation of English than Edinburgh, the Edinburgh accent. And as an American, I subscribe to that.
Yeah. The English accents, I love all of those that come from England, but
I'm not a
never,
big fan of the East Anglican ones. Not a big fan of them, but we
I
won't hold
like
that against
Yorkshire.
them.
I like the Yorkshire accent.
I like my people, the Welsh. I like their accents.
But the best are always going to be the Irish and the Edinburgh Scotsmen and the Highlanders. I love the Highlanders and their accents. But this lovely blacksmith being in France, that is like, yeah, okay. The only thing is, I kind of think that maybe Roland should have been her brother or something, or like they
Yeah,
should have.
that'd be nice.
Yeah, they should have made it work so that either him or the redheaded idiot are blacksmiths.
That's Watt, WOT.
Okay, but the thing is, her being the blacksmith without being in like it just there was something about it. But on the other hand, just hear me out. On the other hand, she fit into the movie really well. She was a good character. She was well written. And it might sound weird, but I think she had better chemistry with Heath Ledger than the actual love interest. And
Okay.
I think they should have made, like, I know it's cliched, but he's chasing after the noblewoman and it doesn't work out and he ends up with the blacksmith woman. I think that would have been a better movie in a way, a better creative decision.
One of my big phrases, one of the things that I love is originally a Pablo Picasso quote, and it is this: talent borrows, genius steals. And no one but artists ever really understand that. Everybody else that I tell that to is like, so you mean steal? Like,
No.
that's the idea? No, this is what I'm talking about. If you're an artist, you get an input, right? You get this movie input, and you're like, you know what would be for me a more compelling story? If this happened, and if this happened. And then all of a sudden, you've got something that is completely Joe's. And yet, you just, because an artist, I feel a true artist cannot help but make his work original. He cannot help but I don't think a real artist could copy another one if he tried. Art forgery is by far the classiest crime that you can ever get convicted of. And second of all, it is also but I believe at just a high level of craftsmanship. And that is not to say that those forgers are not capable, expressive, creative artists, but that act of imitation, of stealing, is not, I think they would agree, is just a technical skill, you know? Anyway.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's an interesting perspective.
But you're an artist, as am I. I love being able to say that I'm an artist now for instead of an amateur one. And we can't help, if we're being true to ourselves, we can't help but being original. And that's another thing I get into with AI. And that's the whole sort of thing is like, we can't help adding our humanity to it, but another time.
Yeah. Well, I think.
And I got called a grifter. I got called a grifter the other day, Joe. On Substack, somebody was like, "You're a grifter," and I was like, "I don't know. I got mad about that. I kind of hurt my feelings because I said I use AI in the concepting process. I've been pretty transparent about that, and that's free for the world to know. I use some AI tools, and also I've done a bunch of lives that are on the record. You can see exactly how I use my AI tools, and you can decide for yourself: is this guy a grifter, or is he somebody who really wants to make some art?"
Well,
Perfect.
The thing is, AI is basically generative stuff. Like I've used online name generators for ideas for names. So then I'll take the first half of one name that comes up and the second half of another. So like what I mean is, you've got
we saw a Substack story about a guy who did fights by rolling a 20-side die or a 12-side die. Does this minor character survive this battle? If so, how wounded?
And the thing with that I did was like like you might have the name Extraniev, and then you've got another name, Dalia. I then take Lia and Extralia, and thus, or something like that. I do that with name generators sometimes. And the thing is,
And you know who else did that? Was Tolkien, if I may. He did that.
kind of, yeah. He played around with the language and names. He didn't have name generators, but he went through the books and the dictionaries and whatnot. So,
I mean,
yeah,
Iluvatar is, as somebody who speaks German and also English will recognize, Vatar is father, and Ilu is illuminate. So I think that's a great name for God, illuminating father.
yeah,
And
which is
so,
what he does.
I'm not saying I'm Tolkien. It's never would I say that. What I'm
But
saying is he kind of used you can be inspired without stealing.
yeah. Now, the thing with the movie, though, is that William's quest to become a knight. Now, while
To change his stats.
yeah, and it's not just changing his stars; it's he's fulfilling the boy's own journey. Because every boy of European and Asian descent dreams of being a knight or a samurai. It is in our blood.
I did.
Yeah, same. The thing is, it's
I
in our
dreamed
blood.
also of being a Jedi Knight too.
Yeah, who hasn't? But the thing is, William did this part of the story is William doing what every youth wanted to do, and the difference is he does it well and better than most of us could. And him falling instantly in love with the one female noblewoman is fine.
The Lady Jocelyn.
The Lady Jocelyn. But like I said, it's just looking at the scenes, he didn't have the same chemistry with her that he did with the blacksmith woman.
I thought they had chemistry personally, but proceed.
They had good chemistry to a point, but it's just he had more scenes with the blacksmith girl. And I found her a more dynamic character. And maybe it's the
She
dragon.
had very, very blue eyes. Also, I just want to throw that out there.
And maybe it's that I saw Dragon Slayer, where the lead is offered the chance with a princess and with a blacksmith girl, and he goes for the blacksmith. And
Must have been some blacksmith's girl.
She's she has a hot temper.
I don't mean to be crude. I don't. I'm
No. She is. I'm
I
just
loved
thinking
watching
about
the
it.
movie is because there are a lot of beautiful women in it, and I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that. They are actresses.
Yeah.
They're actors. They're great. I just am like,
But-
they look great, and I'm sorry.
Well, the thing with the Dragon Slayer movie is the blacksmith woman in there is it's not that she's prettier than the princess, it's that she has more personality. And she
that's
has
important.
she has a Celtic temper. And she's
I don't know if that's important. I don't know if that's something I want, but yeah, we'll leave that for another time.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing I like in a woman. But
I got some gum in here in case you're seeing anything.
Yeah,
trying to get my nicotine down.
It's fine. But the
in a way, I'm doing that.
Well, I was going to say the one guy Jeffrey Chaucer, who wakes up in the ditch having been robbed of everything, was hilarious. But
wasn't he fun?
Yeah, I would have
So
liked
here's
it.
the end of the day. If we get nothing out of this, I appreciate all of this stuff, but can we at least agree that the movie can be fun?
It could be fun. It had its good moments. I think it's a movie which could have been better. And it ends up being kind of mediocre, but it's not terrible per se. Like
it wasn't a waste of time for you to watch it, right? Like you can kind of you can kind of be like, if somebody brings up Knight's Tale, and there will be people I aspire to move across maybe many different fandoms. That's my kind of dream.
Yeah.
Good or not. But as you expand, you might find goofy people like me who watched this movie as 10, 11-year-old little boys, and we really loved it. and it really influenced us. And it was an accessible version of knighthood for us, and it was a very healthy romance. And I think a very healthy portrayal of a boy growing into a man. And so,
Yeah.
if nothing else can be said, I had a lot of fun watching this movie, and it taught me a lot of how to be a better person. And I think it's a really great fantasy movie. It is very anachronistic. And also, if you like this idea a little bit, I've actually taken anachronisms and given them rationales via the magic systems at play in my book.
Well,
So that's a cool
yeah.
idea too.
I'll say this. Some of the ideas in this movie remind me of the movie Rocky. And
And I
except
know that's
Rocky,
one of your favorites.
yeah, except Rocky did everything better, but I'm joking. But Rocky is one of those great breakout movies that I saw by accident because,
Took him 7 years to get that movie made. 7 years he did it by himself.
and my dad that was one of his favorites. I didn't find out. Well, I knew, but I didn't watch the movie till I was a grown man. And I said, I'm just needing movies in the background while I'm sick and writing. Don't I just stop writing and just start watching? But Rocky was something special, all the way up to Rocky 6, which was the perfect ending. But the thing with this movie is that I think where I kind of fall off to an extent is Edward the Black Prince. Now,
And that'd be James Purefoy, right?
he's the perfect actor.
I put a crosshatch star on my character just as an homage to him.
Well, Purefoy is perfect in every role he ever does. He is the perfect
I've
actor.
only seen like 3 of them, so I don't know.
He was perfect in Rome as Mark Antony. He was
He was.
perfect as Solomon Kane. Where, honestly, oh, you haven't seen Solomon Kane. That'll be next.
I know that name, but yeah.
Okay, I'll get to it right after. But Purefoy is someone who he always throws 210% to 500%. And his portrayal is quite kingly, is quite noble.
But he's also got that kind of swagger.
Yeah, he's got charm. And it's because
and charisma. Like I would follow
Purefoy
him.
is charismatic and charming. But the trouble is, Edward the Black Prince was not chivalric and not a good man.
Is somebody mad because of how bad the Black Prince beat the French?
No, it's the 3,000 to 30,000 people he slaughtered who were innocent people.
Okay, all right. Now I feel like a dick.
Yeah, it's because the Black Prince did chevauchée, where the goal was genocide of local villages and whatnot.
Okay, don't do that to me, Joe. Don't box me into that corner. Okay, so
let's
address it.
What
is chevauchée?
Chevauchée is traditionally a night outing where the knights go out and fight.
Okay.
You were not supposed to, however, start slaughtering on holy days or just generally for sport. And the thing is, the Black Prince turned it into, basically hunting peasants in France and Spain. But the thing with Spain is that when he went to do it, now he was allied with some of the Spanish, and the Spanish princes reacted with anger and were, insulted. They said, "Why are you slaughtering our people? And why are you comporting yourself so boorishly?"
It's a reasonable thing to say,
Yeah.
I think.
And the Black Prince, who we know historically reacted with, well, how else is he thought this was what being a man's man was about. So the Spanish switched sides, and the campaign ended in failure. So what he did was he went up to France and wiped some towns off the face of the earth, and did everything he could to wipe out as many French as he could. Also because he could no longer walk after the campaign, and he took it on the French and hated them, and ordered as many of them put to death as possible before he had to be shipped back home to daddy. And the thing is, Edward III and Edward the Black Prince were not kind people. They were not honorable people. They were people who slaughtered basically for sport. But at the same time, they did have some restraints. They were not Henry V. And Henry V was genuinely kind of insane. He was so wicked, his own father feared him.
Well, if I'm going to watch Solomon Kane, okay, you have to watch The Last Duel. That's
Okay,
the trade.
sure.
And you know what? I think you're going to like it. It's a great movie,
Okay.
and you're going to like it. I mean,
Okay.
no, I don't know. I thought you were going to like A Knight's Tale, but this one is
I-
not A Knight's Tale.
Well, I was going to say I did like it. Now,
It's also by Ridley Scott.
Yeah. Okay. But the first time I tried watching this was as a kid. Now, French and Francophone children are raised knowing all the little crimes. I say little, all the crimes Edward, his son, and Henry V did. And for us, it's a bit like, well, okay, these were the Stalins of the Middle Ages.
I'm going to push back a little bit on the Henry V part, but maybe we can do a follow-up on that part. And I have a rationale that has to do with chivalry and the accepted norms of the time, but we can get into that later.
Actually, we know because the church was horrified by what he did.
Yeah, but I have some pushback on that, and I think you should hear me out.
But that being said, what I was going to say is Edward the Black Prince was not always noted for being courteous. So in that
I will
regard,
concede that. I don't know much about him, so I'll concede that. But
here's the thing. He was noted as being well beloved by a lot of the people. And the thing is, Edward the Black Prince was well liked by his brothers.
Not always a constant in the English vying for the throne.
Very true. And so James Purefoy's portrayal was odd to me, even as an adult. But ultimately,
how about that beautiful helmet that he had on, though?
Yes.
Wasn't that thing beautiful?
Yes. But I have to admit, Purefoy can make anyone likable and lovable. So this is where I didn't mind the role he plays in the movie, because it's just a movie. And the thing is, I know I'm going to have some Englishman or something who's going to say, no, he was, so noble and whatnot. No, he wasn't. But
well, I'll be there with you. I'll be defending you.
But the thing is, this Edward, in terms of his accomplishments militarily, it cannot be overstated. He did a bang-up job as Prince of Wales. Few Prince of Wales have accomplished, or I don't know if the title was already in use at the time, but few Crown Princes of England have ever accomplished half as much as the Black Prince.
These are my people, by the way. You got your Celts, and you can have them. Good for you. I got my Welshmen. And my rough and tumble, my ruffians. Okay.
Well,
and there's some Celt in there too, a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, the Welsh are Celts, or were, but
we're just we're the rough and we're the country people,
Yeah,
we're the bumpkins.
But that said, the knight errant becoming a knight and the prince or king behaving courteously to him, this isn't an old story. This is a very old folktale type story. So I really did appreciate that aspect of this movie.
Can we maybe approach A Knight's Tale as a folktale?
I suppose we could.
Knight errant, benevolent king.
Yeah, it's very folklore.
There, if you look at the details, even William, right, he's this radical guy, is behaving at every moment with, I think, an authentic level of deference. To him, he does not approach. He never questions. Now, he says, change our stars, right? And I think not an unreasonable dream to have, given that you have acknowledged that there was social mobility. There were people elevated to the peerage. And I think that he shows something that you don't often see. We like to think of ourselves as the rebels, but if I were in that role, I come from the South. Sir and ma'am slip out of my mouth so automatically that it just, yes, sir, no, ma'am. Yeah, that's just built in, and I would never do anything else. Yeah, and I'm a monarchist, so for me, I'm presented before Jean Capet. I mean, look at the whole sequence where people were like, I'm not jousting against royalty. What if I hurt the heir to the throne? Yeah.
Now, interesting thing, I will actually say one thing this movie got right was Edward, the Black Prince, was a freaking good jouster. He
And
was
by the way, I want to say these people were stars. They
mm,
had painted, the boys are back in town, the boys are back in town. And then you had that they're rolling into London for the world championships. Like there was a world championship tournament. No,
no,
it was some guy got married, some guy did something, somebody won a big battle, and it's like, okay, we're having a big tournament and you did well in these regional tournaments, so you qualify. But it's
mm,
also like, but they're rolling into London. They got the flags on the lances. All of his retainers are on the floor, are on the ground. He's on the horse, and they've got their face paint.
yeah, and Edward the Black Prince, I think is something like the second or third best, uh, or fourth best fighter of tourneys, probably in the entire English line. He's one of the best.
Are we
Um,
saying that William Marshall is the first?
no, he wasn't royalty. He wasn't
Oh, okay.
just amongst the royals. The best might be Henry the Fourth.
Why are these French kings dominating the lists as opposed to other places?
Henry the Fourth of England would have considered himself more English, but because he was the first Lancaster king. But as far as the French kings dominating the lists and being so good, I think it's that, to put it bluntly, the culture was very masculine, and
you're saying that two men riding on horses with long, long poles extending from their hands. You're saying this is a masculine sport? You're not going to get all the liberal out of me. I'm going to Freudian analyze it.
It's masculine because it's about basically being in shape, but being a warrior and proving your mettle and proving yourself more. Well,
this was the most popular sport of the time.
Yeah, it was a proper sport. It wasn't like a bunch of guys running after a ball and then jumping on each other and dry humping each other. This was an actual
what sport? I don't know what that is. Baseball?
American football is the well, it's YouTube. I can't say it, but it is the most.
Oh, American! I like American football. Actually, I do, and I play. Believe it or not, I did play a little bit of it in high school, and that's where I get a lot of my shield wall scenes. Because have you ever sprinted into somebody? It hurts. You know what my job was? Sprinting down the field into a person at least as big as I was.
Oof.
It was not fun. It hurt bad. I wish I could tell you I just decked them and went on, but it would be a lie, Joe. It would be a lie. I bounced off of them generally.
Well, up here in Canada, a lot of people tend to say it is the most, is the least heterosexual thing you could ever do. You're just a bunch of men jumping on each other,
and you got the pants. You got the like they're walking around in breeches.
Yeah. Whereas jousting, there's still a sense of this
horseback.
Yeah.
Horseback.
This is very masculine. This is very you look good doing it. You're tough. Yeah.
So one of the scenes in my novel is the Terrans have instead of the lists as they are usually known, they have these gigantic horses, relatively speaking, not outlandishly large, but they're about the size of Clydesdales, but they're full destriers. And that's in the world of the novel. The Terran destrier is a specific kind of a beast that does not exist. And beasts, by the way, when Middle Ages people refer to horses as beasts, that was a neutral term at worst. Okay. The beast was a neutral term at worst. When I say beast, a horse is an elegant animal. And beast was also at least a positive generally term when referring to horses, but it's a more of a stadium size. I would call it more of a Circus Maximus size.
Okay.
And everybody's kind of around. The Terrans are very, very wealthy for reasons which will become clear and are not they're ill-gotten gains. But the main character, as nerdy and bookish as he is, because of his kind of, there's a magical system, there are two of them, but of his like magical like ghost that haunts him, is able to have some otherworldly powers, and he actually destroys people in the joust. But I mean, you're talking about how you look, you know, you got this up here, and you're just veering down, and you just got like, it's just badass.
Hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? You got your horse here.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna do that very much, but yeah.
but many kings competed for the honor. And this was a very popular sport up until the French Wars of Religion. Then the
Which
joke,
start when?
that was around 1562, but a few years before that, in 1556, I believe. Let me just double check.
So we're guys, we're decidedly, I would argue we're out of the Middle Ages at this point. This is a personal opinion. I
But
subscribe to the popular belief that the end of the Wars of the Roses generally is where we end the Middle Ages. Others may disagree.
well,
Okay.
1559 is when Henri de la France died. He died by a jousting accident. And what happened was his bride,
I'd like to know what happened to the guy who killed him. I'd like to know what happened
he
to him.
forgave him.
Noblesse oblige?
There was noblesse oblige, yes, that was why he spared him. But they were also sort of friendly, and he commanded that he be shown mercy. The guy was exiled, but against the wishes, the posthumous
But he
wishes.
probably would have been killed otherwise.
No, he wasn't supposed to be. He was supposed to be rewarded for a good lance blow. But
And yet he was exiled?
yeah, and then he came back and fought in France for his beliefs and died, I think, at war. The thing is, Henri Dere was very honorable and a very good king. But the problem is that his wife, I believe it was, Catherine de' Medici, was one of the stupidest women who ever lived.
Now that is a name that I recognize, and that is not exactly what I've heard about this woman.
Oh, she was stupid. Nero could rule better than her.
Well, then I need to revise my Nero.
Well,
Okay.
the thing is, she ended up reigning so badly. At the start of the
By
reign,
the way, Nero ended one of the great dynasties of
Yeah.
the Imperial. He tanked it.
well,
Okay.
she tanked France.
Okay.
She, at the beginning, the French monarchy had control of so many fiefs, so much of France.
Maybe we could try to wrap this up at 4
Okay.
Eastern. And that's
That's right.
I'm
By
gonna shut up.
15
You got it.
By 1562, she had lost control of most of the nation to one of the noble families, de Guise. How do you go
Guido
from
de
control?
Lusignan? Or Marie de Guise.
De
Marie de
Guise.
Guise.
Yep.
Like that is, yep.
Yeah, like that family. But she had gone from control over all of France to to the royal family having no control in 3 years. All their influence and power were ceded in 3 years. And
Okay. Talk
after
about
that-
tanking a dynasty.
yeah, and then after that, her sons reigned worse and worse until they were killed. And the cousins of the royal family, Capet-Bourbon, took over under Henri IV. But Catherine de' Medici, for example, at her daughter's wedding, to secure Henri IV's loyalty to the royal family and to heal the wounds in France, decides, I'm going to start slaughtering Protestants. I don't know why, she just decides. And the thing is, this action was so insane. Yes, it would later help cement France as a Catholic nation, but it extended the war for years and years and years. And the trouble is, every action she did was like this. And by the end of the period in which she held so much influence, France basically decided, we really don't want to ever have another woman in command because this was such a bad time. But on top of that, kings were not supposed to go out jousting anymore because
That's why he does under pseudonym Thomas Colville.
Yep. And
A nom de guerre, if you will.
what? Or nom de guerre.
Nom de guerre. That's a
What?
thing. That's actually a thing. The name of war. The name of what? Yeah. Nom de plume. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But what's interesting is that in this movie, Edward is portrayed as just wanting the frill, wanting the fun, but he comports with himself with honor and dignity, and it is he who knights William.
One thing that bothered me about this movie is it's a very Deus Ex Machina moment where he's like, "Oh, he's part of an ancient royal line. We've discovered that he's part of an ancient royal line, so now he can marry Jocelyn, presumably, who is some sort of unnamed.
Yeah.
She's referred to the princess as one point, which I consider a plot hole because
Yeah.
she ain't no princess. There ain't no princess marrying a Thatcher's son. Okay, ain't gonna happen, and we're implied to believe that it's happily ever after. So if we're looking for complaints too, from my side, that is a Deus Ex Machina, and I put the emphasis that puts the deuce in a Deus Ex Machina, if you ask me.
William Marshall married an Irish princess.
Okay. Well, fuck.
But on the other hand, you're right about one thing.
English, though.
And the other thing is, and also French. And the other factor is this takes place around the time of 1356. No Thatcher's son's going to marry like that high up in like the pecking order. It doesn't.
Thatcher's son is not going to marry a blacksmith's daughter.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, all right. Well,
same social
like
rank.
Blacksmiths were like the engineers of the day. You know, they were like they were like the middle, almost kind of like they were the well-to-do almost. And you didn't. That's one thing that I hated about that show, Vikings. First episode, the Earl jams the blacksmith's face into the fire until he dies.
No, he's not going to do that.
You would never, ever do. Now you might look crime egregious enough, you lock him up, and I don't know if he disobeys a direct order from his Earl, maybe. But like just because you needed information, never.
No, blacksmiths were special. But on the other hand, the blacksmiths were peasants, so they would sometimes. Now, on the other hand, let's say blacksmith's daughter. What she might do, for a blacksmith, it might be, well, if she marries a Thatcher's son, I want that boy to come work for me and become my apprentice, and he'll be a blacksmith someday. Or, bear in mind, social mobility. He is a knight, but he's also a knight.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's basically part of the prince's company. You know, he's adopted.
Did you say that there's a difference between being knighted by a prince and there's a difference between knighted by anybody else? Because I thought it was ecumenical. There is? Okay.
Yeah, like for example, William,
and it was surrounded by witnesses, noble and common alike.
Yeah,
who were watching the scene take place. You've got all your witnesses. It's undeniable he's a knight, knighted by the prince.
And on top of that, Edward II is the peak of chivalry in the eyes of the English. So you've got him knighted by the...
And this is the Prince of Wales? Because everybody's named Edward at this point.
Yeah, fair. Prince of Wales. He's knighted by the Prince of Wales. You're not going to get higher than that. Everybody wants to be knighted by him. Or Edward I.
Yeah, it's almost better. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost better than getting knighted by the king. Because he's like a warrior, right? You know?
Well,
he's
Edward
the next in line.
Edward I was a warrior. They're both warriors.
I thought, I'm doing my stupid English Welsh baggage about the Black Prince, maybe.
But
thinking he's a great... Yeah.
But the thing is, you have... Like, he's been knighted by him, and he's basically been accepted into his company. For all we know, Edward takes him on as one of his men, which would make him one of his own knights. That is amazing. Everybody wants that job. Nobles will kill for it. Literally, they did. They literally
nobles killed to be, I forget exactly what it was called, but basically the guy that stood around while Henry VIII took a dump. Basically, like that was an intimate thing where you could get the ear of the king and no one else could. Noblemen wanted that.
That's in a later period, in the more
of course
Tudor period.
We're in the Tudor period.
They didn't want to be that guy. They left that to the servants. They wanted to be one of the guys riding into battle with him.
Uhtred Bebimba.
Yeah. And William's that guy. So he's a favorite now. So a blacksmith's daughter marrying that, every blacksmith's like, I would kill for that. So that's
because he's probably going to get some land.
Yep.
You know, he's probably who knows if he's going to marry. Let's play this out real quick, right? And I want to give you the last 10 minutes, but what, we get to Jocelyn and like, okay, she's called Princess. I feel like she's Lady Jocelyn,
Yeah,
like
lady.
I think she's like a noble. I don't think she's a low noble, but I think she's something. And like let's play this out, right? At one point William says, "And where are we to live? In my hovel?" You know, basically like we run, and you don't. I can't give you anything. So let's say he gets a small patch of land. I mean, does that even work out between him and Jocelyn? Because she's a noble by birth.
Yeah.
And he's
Now,
a lord now, right? Maybe he's just a
yeah,
baron, something, whatever. But he's a lord. And you could be a knight and still be semi-noble, if I'm not
but that's the
mistaken.
thing. If she's the heiress to land, then he gets her land.
Oh, they could just get married. He inherits.
Yeah, but is she going to be happy without extending the land and being like? I know there was the
Yeah,
Woodville.
William's coming with
They were
nothing.
like,
He's coming with nothing of his own.
yeah, the Woodvilles did this, like the mother
It's
of the.
different when it's the woman. It's different.
But the thing with the Woodvilles is they later had like so many kids, and the Woodvilles were on. Like the problem is, the matriarch of that family was uncannily greedy. The patriarch of that family was uncannily greedy. You had a very greedy family, but that's an unheroic example. So let's look at William as though he's William Marshall. The thing is, he's going to have to work even harder to prove himself. Now,
I would argue too that we don't know about his we don't know about his martial skills, his real martial skills. We know about him on the joust, but
well,
I think, as they will say, the joust is not battle.
but we know he's a great swordsman. I just remember there are a few lines about that.
You are right, and that is that's what gets him by in the early days.
Yeah, I just remembered.
But I mean, he's a knight, and it's a very big deal to him that he's a knight. So he's gonna want to be, I'm a horseback,
Yeah.
primary guy.
The trouble is, I don't know if it could work between them.
Let's say Princess is a plot hole, a mistake.
Okay.
She's a lady. Let's say she's like the third daughter of a count, Pierre d'Alençon.
Well, he's got nothing to offer.
I want it to work out between them. I want it to work out between them, but also I want my work grounded in historical reality, because that is my anachronism. Historical gritty reality is what pulls me into a story. But at the same time, I'll end on this. For me, it's a fun movie that I saw when I was a little boy that was made accessible. A lot of things that I think I would have had to wait until I was older to get access to. And the music and some of the things were not accurate.
But it's meant to be fun.
It's meant to be. I want to make clear, this movie is meant to be fun. It's meant for kids. And I think that if you have a young son, I think, and I don't mean to speak for Joe, but I think you should consider having him watch this movie.
Yeah.
And you can have a seminar with him afterwards. But this is my big thing. My novel actually does not have many anachronisms. Where it does, like in the rubber, in the plastic, there is actually an intricate world building rationale under this that will become clear. But the anachronisms, they helped me get into it.
Yeah, I was writing at one point a novel about just jousting, and I was planning to semi-model it after Rocky and after the idea of jousting and whatnot, and making it fantasy and just getting into the sport, getting into the different types of armor, the lances, and the hierarchy and whatnot. But I kind of dropped off from writing that about a year ago. So this has made me start to think maybe continue that story.
I think it's a good mode for short stories too. It's a good, because you get, what do you got to do? You got to center it around a tournament.
Yeah.
That's a
I
couple
w-
thousand words.
yeah, I was going to make it about a 300-page book. And
I'm just thinking Substack style.
yeah. Um, but I was writing in French, so I don't know if I have many fans who'd be willing to read it.
Can you, for genre growth, will you consider one day, if I can make this thing work for genre growth, which is my growth focused Substack, if you guys want to grow your genre fiction, I'm a guy who's very knowledgeable of sales and marketing that also is doing his own. So if you watch my numbers go up and you like that and you want to learn how I do that, this is for you. Joe is one of my beta testers. Thank God, love him. I comped him a free for life thing. I'm going to add those guys. I do need their email addresses. For whatever reason, the only way you can do a comp free for life thing is with the actual email addresses. So as soon as you get me those, I will enter in those 3 names. But after that, it's done. And in the middle of selling my thing, I wasn't quite sure where I was going. So Joe, no.
All right. I will find you their emails, and I'm already looking into them.
I'm especially excited about this fantasy girl. And if it's not
Oh,
too bold or
guys.
forward, if it's not too bold or forward, I would ask her through you to consider maybe if she would trade a similar, maybe a
Oh,
comp,
yeah.
but it would be great
I'll tell her. She's
because I want to read more romantasy,
oh yeah.
real good
I
romantic fantasy.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm French, so there was a bit of that. Well, I had the attitude from like a romance fiction. Yeah. Um, which is very French of me. Yeah. In France, this would not do. But
I say, that's the English version. Oh,
but
good day, sir.
but to read her Wingswept novel, well, you would think it was written by angels, and it was so beautiful. And
Wow.
when I've told her, she was very shy about it. She's part French, even though she's American, and she's also part
Well,
Irish.
nobody's perfect.
Well, she's as close to it as any
I'm
one born in
American.
America will get. I'm joking.
If I'm insulting her, I'm insulting myself times 2.
Yeah, but honestly, she knows a bit of French, a bit of Lithuanian, I think. She's passionate about
Where's
Irish
she
Lithuanian.
based?
She's
Like what?
over in. Well, I'll let you know later.
Just time zone wise would be helpful.
The
I don't
same
want to
time zone as you.
disrespect her. Same time zone? Perfect.
Yeah, she's pretty much in the Appalachian area.
Sure.
As
Yeah,
all
I
the
know. I
American.
don't want to. Yeah,
No, but
I like
here's
to
the
know time
interesting
zones.
thing.
That's all.
Appalachia seems like every great writer of fantasy alive today that's from the U.S. are all in Appalachia. I'm discovering.
There's a movement in the South called the Southern Gothic movement, and there are poets. And let me tell you something. Let's listen to these opening stanzas from John Crow Ransom, a member of the Southern Gothic poetry movement, also known as the Agrarian movement. And it is Bells for John Whiteside's Daughter. It's an elegy for a young woman, a girl dying of like diphtheria or something. This is 1910s, 1920s, down in the South of the United States. Her wars were brooded in our high window. Brooded was a word I had to look up. There's brooded, like I'm like this serious kind of like sad guy, but there's also brooded, B-U, and it's probably French in origin, B-R-U-I-T-E-D. B-R-U-I-T-E-D. Bruited. And it means to conduct. And I heard it in the movie Lincoln, which is a beautifully written movie, by the way, about the United States president, the 16th the 16th president of the. Anyway, he is Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is actually one of my, believe it or not, inspirations as a writer, if you can believe that. I can quote passages from Lincoln, and not just the Gettysburg Address. But anyway, John Crow Ransom. Her wars were brooded in our high window. We looked among the apple trees and beyond, where she took arms against her shadow, or harried unto the pond. The lazy geese, like a snow cloud, dripping their snow on the green grass, tricking and stopping, sleepy and proud, who cried in goose, alas. I'll end it there. But isn't that a beautiful little opening part?
It
It's
is.
sad because the girl dies, but her wars were conducted. She's a girl with a stick. She's chasing around some geese. But he made it
That's
like because kids take it so seriously. And that's one thing that I love about kids, and I'd like to think that I'm good with them, is because they take things so. If you can go up to a little boy and just be like, he's messing around and he's getting rowdy and he's indoors, it's raining outside, and the parents are just like, oh, this little, Susie sits over there in the corner and she draws, and Timmy is over, and if you just go up to him and it's like, hey, how hard, like how high can you jump on the bed? Right, go over to the parents, be like, the bed's strong, right? All right, boom, boom. How high can you jump on the bed? And then you're good. You just gotta like route it. You gotta route it into another thing.
Yeah, I've taught kids, and
But her wars were brooded. She had this sword. She's chasing the geese around, but it's beautiful. American poetry is slept on. I mean, I will like to supply the team with examples of people like my favorite poet, Hart Crane. But go ahead.
Okay. No. We're nearing the end of the show, so I'll just say don't forget, everyone, to subscribe to Sam's Substack. You have several newsletters on Substack, so I would encourage everyone to go there. Oh, wow, that's way more than me.
So a big part of my theory on how to succeed on Substack is by publications. There does not seem to be any extra charge for these, but it really funnels them into things. So everything, well, Mad to the Spy is a little bit different, but AFL the Bastard is a story about William the Conqueror. That's free forever, right? This is powered by people who are interested and willing to pay $8 a month to learn how a genre writer with a background in sales is growing. And you can see, all the numbers, but that is just, so why do you put up with me? I just talk and talk
I'm
and
learning new
talk.
things. No, it's fun.
I don't want to mislead anybody, right? If you like the story, that's what I want to talk 70% about the story. I want to talk 30% about growing your audience. That's the story. That's free. You get it. You don't even have to sign up for Substack. But
yeah.
But if you want to learn how I'm doing it, then you can. And Joe, you can ask Joe. If Joe's like it's shitty after a few weeks, then don't do it.
Well, I'm still looking through it. So you just started it. So I'm
just started. This is beta. We're in beta right now. There are 3 people paying for it right now. 2 of them are family. So do not, it's rough around the edges, but it's meant to be super impactful. That's all I'll say. I'll add those 3 people, but after that, I can't, we've got like 25 people.
Yeah, I get it.
And I wanted you to consider eventually, if this thing pans out, teaching seminars on French writing. Here's my thing. I don't mean this to sound like a dick, okay? I don't mean this to sound for money, for money. So I don't mean to be like a dick, but if you're not confident in your writing, we're not ready to take you yet. You are welcome. And you're welcome to sign up because you will benefit and you will get some subscribers. But the ideal person for this is between 20 to 50 subscribers. Below 50, but you have to, it's going to work best. Again, I'd love everybody to sign up. Don't get me wrong, but I want to be forewarned that it's 100% paywall. This is a walled garden. It's $8 a month. You can also save, $69 is for the year. But the other side of it too is, it's going to be great, and Joe will give you the straight dirt on whether or not it is. We'll see. Okay. But also keep an eye on my numbers. See if the proof is in the pudding.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely be reading because I don't know much about marketing, so I'll be learning new things.
I'm bringing the dark arts of corporate marketing to people. Oh, I was saying, everyone is welcome no matter what. However, if I don't want to waste anyone's time, if you don't have people that are sticking around once you get them, Joe has 1,800 followers on Substack alone, right? I would argue the reason I'm comping Joe is my hope is he will occasionally, he's a busy guy, but occasionally look at it and be like, this was helpful, or this was helpful, and maybe we'll occasionally be like, hey, wanted to recommend. But Joe is not the person that I would be like targeting for my thing. I'm looking for people because all I want to use the dark arts of marketing and corporate sales that were honed over a decade in American, the cutthroat kind of technology enterprise world, and make it work for you to bring people and have them stay. If your writing is really jejune, which is a word that means childish, if your characters lack depth, if your story is what I want to get to a point is where we have people like Joe teaching seminars to the degree where they're specialized. I've been looking at the way that publications are set up. You can add people that have bylines. There are programmatic ways to shuffle, or not shuffle, but shunt royalties, or whatever you want to call it, over to Joe. I will admit I will be taking a piece of that, but it will be a minority piece, right? But
Okay.
I want to have things that are like, I want established writers to come in here. If you get people, I don't want to be in the business of bringing people to your thing and it's bad fiction, right? I
Okay.
want there to be some kind. I want. I think that you'll benefit the most if, and I would wait until later. But let's say you are a francophone fantasy writer, right? And you want to write for and forgive me if I say this wrong, but the Quebecois audience, right? That's what you want to write for. That's a big market, and you could do very well because it's by French person speaking French, or a French Canadian speaking, and I want Joe, if he wants, to be like weekly sessions with Joe. He has office hours where it's alive and he's working on whatever he needs to work on, right? He's kind of typing, and then
Interesting.
people pop in, and then we've got a seminar going on, and Joe releases like a weekly article. I was thinking of you more for like high fantasy in the beginning because that's got a bigger, if you don't
Yeah.
mind me saying, in English. But maybe we can get someone, if we can turn this into, I see this as a publishing business where we have advice on tap. And the big difference is we're going to be working on projects instead of subscriptions. I'm a big believer in products and books as products instead of services. A book is a book. A book is a magical thing. A
Yeah.
book they used to chain in monasteries because people would steal them. All
Yeah.
right. In this context, when we're looking at it against a service, it's a product. I want to buy my book and then have it. So we're going to get to the next best thing that we can do. If you're able to draw people in and they're willing to pay you for your work, I don't think you need to do this. I want to know how you're working on it, and what you've got going on. But for example, an example that I put together was I put an entire subplot into a different publication,
Mhm.
and that would be if I weren't doing genre growth, which is just gg at or gg.myname.com, and Joe will include it. All my stuff is tied to my website ultimately. But if you put that in there, if my capstone project was going to be Mad to the Spy, the more nuanced and detailed intimate story about a girl who is working her way up through the kitchens to be a
Mhm.
spy in an enemy castle, was going to be the paid version, right? And that was going to be paid at like so and so, and you get that plus. So that's going to be just like an example of how we're going to get creative and say, for Billy Bob whatever, your upsell, right? Your upsell is, do you want to have an additional subplot, or do you want to do something else, right? Again, if you can get people to read your fiction on a subscription basis, God bless, tell me what you are doing. But
Mm.
if you want to differentiate yourself, which I think is a shortcut, then we're going to be working on projects like that.
Interesting. Well, as for what I'm gonna link to in terms of my stuff, I'm gonna include on my end my Royal Road. Um, Probably I don't really have anything that's really jousting like, so
I like
probably
the short story idea.
um, probably I'll link to Baron Cub, which
Saxon stories, one thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna identify at least 3 target markets, but no more than 5. There are a handful of hashtags that are specifically tied. You can't, if anyone is following these hashtags, they are a fan specifically of this series. My 3 are Red Rising, a sci-fi series that has many overlaps with
Mhm.
fantasy. The second one is Saxon Stories, which Baron Cub is based on. Not, the Saxon Stories by Bernard Cornwell. These are the Last Kingdom, etc. Both the show and the books. The third one is called Dune. This is also a science fiction novel, typically classified. However, this is a whole nother podcast, but there are a lot of ways where this is a fantasy novel, good and evil, God, human potential, that kind of thing. So I found specific, and it's not like the hashtags wind up working are not things like Red Rising. It's Red Rising series. So we've got, I think it's Social Mondays or Wednesdays, where we get together and you send me your 3, 4, whatever, your target markets, right? The people that are going to overlap with your book, whatever it is, or your publication. And I go out and find, using some tools that I have, what your perfect hashtags are going to be, or maybe you just find them yourself and you do it yourself. But that's how I want to get people to think about going after a target market, by which I should say audience. We're going to be competing right now. I'm a competitive person a little bit, and it helped me be successful in sales. And we're going to be a little bit competitive because we're going to need to compete for the most valuable resource that there is. And that is the time, the audience's time and attention. By the end of the day, after this call, I'm probably going to start to shut down my whole work operation. I get up very early. And that's where I do some of my lives, my social media mornings. Which are going to be free for the foreseeable future. I'm looking at maybe an April paywall date, hard paywall date. Even after that April date, after a week or two, many of the things are going to cycle out in the early days out into free. But for now, I'm hosting, I wouldn't say it's every day, but a couple times a week, I'm doing Social Media Mondays, where I'm showing you how I get a packed content calendar within 10 minutes. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. There are a few differences between me and other people, but the one thing that I will say is you get to judge me based on my own genre fiction that I'm publishing at the exact same time.
Well, we're both going to keep trying to change our stars with fiction. So
I'm glad at least it wasn't a waste of time.
No, I wasn't.
But I've got Solomon Kane. Kane. I will find that, but Last Duel by Ridley Scott.
Okay, that'll be our next history movie podcast for History Barbarians. So look forward to that, everyone. And until next time, take care, everyone.